I told you that the work that you're doing right now, the caregiving, the household management, the mental load juggling, all of it, is worth over $200,000 a year, would you believe me? Hey friends, welcome back to Work-Life Harmony. Today we're going to be tackling something that really keeps women stuck in both overwhelm and resentment. And it's ultimately not knowing what your time is actually worth. Now, whether you're a stay-home parent, whether you're working outside the home, running a business, or some combination of all three, I guarantee you this. I guarantee you that right now, you're undervaluing your time. And we're going to have a conversation about that and fix that here today with a two-part conversation. So here's what we're going to be breaking down and talking about. First, you're going to be understanding what the real economic value of your caregiving and household work really is. Yes, there's an actual number here. And secondly, if you're a business owner like I am, I'm going to show you how to figure out what you're really making per hour in your business and then why both of these numbers are going to change everything in terms of how you go about making certain decisions. This podcast episode was inspired because I was recently having a conversation with a dear friend of mine, and she kind of broke down crying and said that she feels really guilty right now for not contributing financially to their home. She said, "I feel guilty because," and I quote, "I'm not working." Now, what she meant was, I'm not getting a paycheck, because let's be crystal clear here. She's a mother of 4 kids under the age of 12. So yeah, she's working. She's actually working really, really hard and doing the toughest job out there. But here's the thing. We've been, as women, conditioned to believe that if we're not getting a paycheck for something, right, then it must have no value. And we all know that that could not be further from the truth. So as part of the conversation, I shared with her information from several varying economic reports that consistently show that to outsource everything that she does for her family right now would range anywhere from $180,000 to $220,000 US per year. Let that number sink in. $180,000 to $220,000 a year, right? So here's the problem. It's this conditioning, right? We've been taught that value and worth equals a paycheck, equals money. Meaning if you're not earning money directly, it's so easy to fall into a trap and think that your time isn't worth much. And when we're feeling that way, it shows up in how we make decisions. This is what makes us go, "Oh, forget it, I'll just do it myself," right? Or I can't justify spending money on A, B, or C that might help me. The guilt that we end up feeling if we're not contributing financially is real, even though we're literally doing the work of multiple full-time jobs. Right? Think about the last time you considered hiring help for something that you manage, whether it's cleaning services, a meal service, a household manager, like whatever it is. Chances are that little voice popped up saying, I should just do this myself. We can't afford to do that right now because I'm not making any money. And meanwhile, you're busy working till 11, 12 p.m. at night and with really littles in the house, right? You might be in out multiple times in the night, and you're working nonstop trying to keep up with everything. But you're still feeling like you're not having any worth or value because there isn't a paycheck connected to it. And when I saw some of the most recent reports around the economic value of a full-time stay-at-home parent, it was astounding to me. Because in a lot of communities, the number ranges based on where you live, right? What the cost of living is and all of that. But it commonly, more often than not, exceeds $200,000 US per year. And this isn't some made up feel good number. They got this data based on actually adding up what would it cost to pay someone to do all of the roles that you are currently fulfilling. And this covered roles such as childcare, caregiving, right? Household management and organization. There are actual night nurses. They are not cheap. So if you're the one getting up multiple times through the night with, young children, that as well. Meal planning and prep, transportation, educational support, healthcare coordination, event planning, home maintenance stuff, financial management, bill paying. Like the list goes on and on when you sit down and really think about all the different roles that you are filling. And here's what's wild. Here's what's really wild. This applies whether you're working outside the home or not, because you may be in a situation where you do have a full time or a part time job and you're, quote, earning a paycheck, but you're still doing all of that other work on top of the paid work. These math equations, they just don't map out. And so here's an exercise that I would love for you to go through, whether you're working and, quote, earning a paycheck or not. All right. Whether you're working outside the home or not, make a list of all the current unpaid labor that you do in a typical week, right? Between the house, the meals, the kids, maybe you're even caring for elderly parents, whatever it is. And then for each task, take a few minutes, research what it would cost to outsource it, right? Look up potentially childcare costs, house cleaning services, meal prep, or even meal delivery, household managers, tutoring rates if you're doing that, right? All of the time spent running errands, driving, and add all of it up. And this may feel uncomfortable, right? But there's a purpose to it. You might even find yourself starting to think, but I don't do it like I would do it differently as a professional, or maybe I would do it better than them, or maybe they would do it better than me, right? Or maybe you find yourself going, but I'm not doing it full time. You're just going to stop. And you're going to turn all those noises off. This isn't about skill level. This is about the actual value of the work being done, what people pay to have this work done for them. When I walk women through this exercise, and I did this with my dear friend, usually here's what happens. First of all, they're astounded at how high the number is. Now, with my friend, with where she lives, this number came in at our rough was $208,000 a year. All right, it's a big number. But then the second thing that happens when that shock wears off is that self-realization she had of, wow, I've been treating my time and what I do as if it was worthless because there isn't a paycheck associated to it. But seeing that number was this completely validating reframe for her of just how valuable and truly worthy the work is that she is doing. And knowing this number starts to change things. So first off, it helps change potentially some decision making. Right? Once you know what your time is worth, because you can get that, number per year and then divide it into what an hourly rate might be. So maybe your hourly rate, you might be realizing, you know what? My hourly rate's about 200 and 300 bucks an hour. Maybe all of a sudden when you're looking at possibly hiring that cleaning service for $150 a month, now it doesn't feel quite so extravagant, right? When you think about the amount of time that you're spending doing it. Now, I'm not going to pretend that every situation that I'm bringing up here is necessarily affordable for everyone. I get that. So I'm not just blindly saying, hey, go hire the house cleaning service. But it will help you in thinking through potential decisions on where it might make sense to lean on some outsourcing if possible, because so many times for women, they don't just out of sheer guilt. Now, the next thing that gets to happen is it gets to validate how you feel. It gets to validate the fact that you're likely exhausted, right? And you're not failing at anything. What's happening is you're trying to do multiple full-time jobs simultaneously. So of course you're overwhelmed. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just doing too much. Now, the third thing that starts to happen, ideally, is it starts to shift the conversations in your household. Right? So if you have a partner or a spouse, right, you get to have conversations with them to say, hey, look, here's what the cost would be to outsource all the services that I am currently managing and maintaining in our house. And so again, it really kind of level sets and shifts that conversation. And if you don't have a partner or spouse at home, once your kids get old enough, it can be a fantastic conversation of, hey, here are all the roles. Here's everything it takes to run our household. We need to figure out some ways for all of us to contribute here so that this load is not all sitting on one person. And my eyes were really, really open to this shortly after my daughter was born. My husband and I were going in and kind of updating life insurance will, things that people typically do, and a huge change, permanent change, such as adding a member to your family comes in. And had a fascinating conversation when we were looking at life insurance policies in particular. And it was incredibly eye opening for us because one of the exercises we went through was really mapping out, okay, what would be the financial impact if something catastrophic were to happen and my, husband died versus if something catastrophic were to happen and I died at that stage of life. And when we added up and really looked at the impact, for my husband, it was, here's the salary that would stop. And for myself, I was still working part-time, so there was a salary component, but then there was also the conversation around you would need, he would have to hire full-time childcare. He would have to hire household help. And when we realized all the tasks that I did as the primary caregiver, it was like it would cost a lot more to, quote, replace me than him in that stage of life because of all the roles and responsibilities I had. And so it ended up, leading to a conversation of a higher life insurance policy on myself because of the cost it would have taken to replace me in those early years. And that was a really powerful exercise and conversation for us to have together. Now, if you are a business owner, such as I am, there's an additional conversation that we need to have about this hourly rate that's all about calculating your business hourly rate. Because I see it all the time. I see women celebrating revenue numbers, but without actually digging into understanding how much are they actually making every hour that they're working. And friends, unfortunately, sometimes those numbers aren't great. Now, sometimes they are, right? But knowing the number is what's going to help you make some really smart choices in your business. All right. This is all about getting tactical with the data, with your business numbers. It's about understanding how much money you're actually bringing home. All right. So we're going to talk about that here so that you can make smarter choices about both the tasks that you work on and when it might be time to bring in help with your business. And people avoid this because it can be uncomfortable, but it is necessary. All right, so first off, the most important thing to understand is that the revenue that you are making in your business, meaning the money coming in, is not the number that equals what your hourly rate is, okay? Because people will forget about the fact that there's expenses in their business, right? So the very first important thing to understand is you need to make sure that you know what is your actual profit, right? Saying I made $10,000 this month is not the same thing as saying I made $10,000 this month, but I spent $4,000 in expenses, right? So now you're actually only profiting $6,000, not only, but just that's a big difference, right? So first and foremost, we need to know what is the profit in your business for the month. Now, once you have that, the second part is really tracking how many hours do you work in a given month so that you can actually calculate what your hourly rate is. Here are the 4 most common scenarios that I see once you actually get this math in place. Oftentimes, there will be women that are feeling super excited because they're like, I've made it. I've hit that first milestone. I'm a 6-figure business owner, right? Maybe they've left a corporate job. When the time comes and they actually do all the math, they realize they're actually still making way less than what they were making in their corporate job. And that's neither good nor bad. It's just information that you need to have, right? Another common pitfall that people fall into is they're only tracking the money that's coming in and they're not tracking the time. So they're feeling like they're making way more an hour than they actually are. This is why we've got to understand this number. If you don't know your hourly rate in your own business, you can't make informed decisions about where to spend your time or your money. Period. All right, I'm going to say it again. If you don't know your hourly rate in your business, you will not be able to make informed decisions about where to spend your time or your money. Now, I've got a really simple calculator tool that I built in a Google Sheet that I've created specifically for this that you can play around with it. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's a tool that you can download for free. So if you want to grab that, just go ahead and take the show notes. But again, you can build this for yourself as well. Basic formula, right? Just get your actual profit in your business for the month, track how many hours you actually worked. And guys, you've got to be honest here. The quick 15-minute email check every day that you're ignoring, that needs to be in there. If you're working on the weekend and acting like you're not, you need to add that, right? You've just got to get the true heart of this number. And then it's just a simple division problem, right? Divide the profit by the hours worked. And then you're going to get your hourly rate. And again, I've got a fun little tool. If you go to the show notes, you can download it for free. You can do a bunch of running different scenarios with it. Now, again, the important considerations here. You need to be using profit, not revenue, all of your working hours, okay? And even think about work that some people might think of as unpaid, the stuff that you don't think about, the marketing work, maybe the admin, the bookkeeping, all of that. And the first time that business owners go through this, they typically discover that their hourly rate was actually lower than what they, in their head, thought it was. Now, one of the more important things that they discover, which is where it gets really interesting, is how much time they're spending on really low value tasks and how much time they're spending on tasks that could be outsourced at a very low rate. They often start to realize that potentially they're way undercharging for their services as well. So a lot of realizations start happening once you identify what your hourly rate is. Now, the whole point of understanding this is now it helps to inform decisions that you need to make. Once you know your hourly rate, deciding what tasks deserve your time and what don't, now you get to put that numeric, number there. And outsourcing decisions become a lot clearer. Priorities of your time become a lot clearer, right? It becomes so much easier to see it. If you are a business owner and you have not read Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time, he goes into this in great detail and gives exceptional advice around this as well. So even think about it. Maybe you are currently doing all the graphics for your social media, and perhaps you spend 3 hours creating social media content. And you've discovered that your hourly rate maybe is $75 an hour, or let's just round it up and let's say you've calculated that your hourly rate is $100 an hour. Well, that's $300 worth of your time, right? 3 hours at $100 an hour. But maybe you could hire a VA to do this at $40 an hour, right? And free up 3 hours of your time. So this is where we start to make very informed, very data-based, not emotional-based decisions. And I remember the first time I hired somebody, it was terrifying. I kept thinking I can't afford to do this. But when you break down and look at the numbers and you see this is how much time it's freeing up for me to go do other tasks that are higher value, that would cost more to outsource, it really reframes it. And it helps you step into that from a decision of, place from feeling very powerful and very CEO-like. Another pushback I hear all the time is, oh, it's just faster if I do it myself. Is it though? Maybe the first time, right? Because you have to train someone. But in the long run, are you sure it will be faster? And even if it takes someone a few minutes longer, is it the best use of your time? All right. And then a third one always is, well, they won't do it as good as I do. Guess what? They don't have to do it just as good as you do or the same way that you do. They just have to do it good enough, right? Not everything has to be perfect. And this isn't about being, too good to do certain tasks. It's about being strategic with where your most valuable resource, your time, goes. And when you know your hourly rate, you get to make decisions based on math instead of emotion or guilt. And those are much better decisions. So, whether we're talking about the $200,000 a year plus worth of caregiving and household labor that you're doing, or whether we're talking about the hourly rate in your business, the core message is the same here, friends. You need to stop undervaluing your time, because when you undervalue your time, it is costing you energy, peace of mind, and self-worth. Because when we don't know our worth, we make decisions from a place of guilt and obligation instead of strategy and self-respect. We end up saying yes to things that drain us. We hold on to those tasks that someone else could handle, and then we end up feeling guilty about investing in help that would actually save our money, our energy, our mental capacity. Because when you truly know your worth, again, you get to make informed decisions instead of guilt-based ones. You get to have clear, meaningful conversations with partners about division of labor. We get to make confident decisions about where it might make financial sense to outsource. And you stop treating your time as if it's unlimited and worthless. And most importantly, you get to recognize that taking care of yourself and lightening the load isn't selfish, it's strategic. So here's what I want you to do here after we wrap up this episode. Okay, everyone listening, I want you to make that list of all the unpaid labor and calculate for yourself, what would it cost to outsource this? What would it cost to replace you, essentially? And write that number down, all right? Look at that number. And secondly, if you're a business owner, grab that hourly rate calculator, or you can do the math on your own and figure out what you're actually making per hour. All right. And then go look at your work-based task list and identify what are the low-hanging fruit that might be your first step in outsourcing. This isn't about trying to get rid of everything, right? It's not about outsourcing everything. And it's not about becoming someone who doesn't contribute, to the everyday life at all. It's about making decisions with our eyes wide open. It's about recognizing your value and about treating your time like the precious resource it is. You are worth way more than you think you are. I know this. And your time is worth more than you're treating it. And once you really understand that, everything changes. All right. Now, if this episode has hit home for you, and if you know of anyone that would benefit from hearing it, please feel free to share this with a friend. And I'll see you next week, friends. Now go calculate your worth, because I have a feeling you're going to be amazed.